Here.
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 There we go. Let's see here. Do we need to approve the minutes from last time, or is that? So. I'm sorry.
Participate.
Yes.
I'll do that. So information on participating in today's meeting and providing public comment, including remotely by Zoom or telephone, is on this meeting's agenda, which is online at isearchmonterey.org. We ask attendees to keep phones and devices muted if you're here in the chamber. And we do ask that you join in time if you'd like to make a public comment.
All right, so now we want to move to approve the minutes from the last meeting. Anybody?
I didn't see any problems, so I'll move to approve.
I'll second that.
All right, all approved? All right,
All right.
Yes.
pass the minutes. And we'll move on to the approved report on the expanded path of history.
All right, thank you, Chair Thomas. Yeah, so as we discussed, actually, the kind of the next steps for the path of history at the last commission meeting, we went over everything, and I did present it to the Historic Preservation Commission as well. There was no kind of additional changes, feedback. They at that point, they were just appreciative to highlight more areas in that the additional sites were added in the expanded path of history, and that we were highlighting the two other areas. So with that, I believe what we should be doing from this is that finalizing the map. And so that's what that means at this point is just saying we should be either creating an ad hoc subcommittee or another group or a small group, one or two people, to really work on creating a map, adding that content for digital, starting to go through like basically approving this. So approving this project. So I believe what we should do is approve the project and then either keep the current subcommittee and work on with that subcommittee to basically finalize what it was from that report, to go through the content from that report to create our map of what we're going to do, adding content for digital first, and then starting to work on distributing the printed maps. So updating the printed maps from the city of Monterey, which we do for the Explore Monterey brochures that go out into tourist areas. And then start looking at wayfinding solutions in the community from that as well. So once we start looking at that, the digital, the print, then we start looking at wayfinding. And I know that has been something that this commission has asked about, is adding more kind of markers and looking at what the funding or grant funding, or how do we get physical markers in the community that highlight what the path of history is on there. And then we could come back and identify funds, look at what's available for that, and then also presenting an update to City Council on the expanded path of history. So I believe that's the next step. So I know there were some concerns with the report. I think the report is good for what we need it to be, and to go forward to basically create that subcommittee that will highlight, and we can create our document of what that's going to be on there. With that, happy to answer any questions, and I welcome Dennis here as well. And Dennis can also be a point of contact for any questions with this agenda item.
So this is an action item?
This would be an action item to approve the report. And then I believe we should continue with, unless there's a change to the ad hoc subcommittee that we have, I believe that we should continue with that ad hoc subcommittee to identify if the sites identified in the path of history final document are the sites that we want in the final path, and those, like the additions to the current path and the two additional paths out there. Do we want all those three sites or additional ones on there? But I would like to see an action item that we approve that report and then continue the ad hoc subcommittee for the further steps.
I have a question. It's probably a typo in
Sure.
here. I didn't know what the Peel District is.
Oh,
Someone advised me it might be the Pearl District,
should be the Pearl District.
Okay. but the Pearl District was never designated a district by the city. Does that matter?
I don't think it's a term, and I don't know exactly when. I have to look back, but I know the planning department has started to use that kind of informally. So if you go in there, the planning department started to come up with that. I don't know if Chair Thomas, if you have more information on when Pearl District might have been started.
I don't, I mean, it's always been referred to as the Pearl District. That's how I always heard it. So.
And so it's essentially the Pearl District. When you look at the planning zones and the maps, there is a rough kind of a layout of what that area is, but it's not a neighborhood community. It's not like a neighborhood association, for example. So it's not a neighborhood association, but it's essentially like a kind of a historic district. Planning and Historic Preservation Commission has looked at.
They have designated others specifically as those districts,
Right.
but I understand for financial reasons, when it came to doing the Pearl District, they ran out of money
Hmm.
and they couldn't formally do it. So I guess just as long as we all know, it is a district in the vernacular. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Can I ask a question though? When you said they ran out of money, what was the money?
I imagine to pay one of these consultants from San Francisco.
I'm sorry.
I imagine it was to pay a consultant in San Francisco.
I'll move, we accept the report.
I'll say
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
We want to have any, or is there anybody online or anybody in person, public comment on this? No. Okay. All right.
Move on to the next. Start all the California tile map.
Awesome. So more info on that than what's in the report. Okay. So as many of you may know, we are sitting here. There was the brown Underwood adobe over there and Colton Hall. This was the Few Memorial Plaza in 1930s. They created this plaza. And I was asked recently about the Alta California tile map. And so I went to inspect it and asked our new artifact specialist, Brianna Schwerlin, I'll talk to Brianna in a bit and I'll introduce her as well. But I asked Brianna to work with me on going through our files about the art, because we had some items in our Past Perfect, which is our museum archive database, about the items. So we went and looked at the tile map. It looked like it was bulging, possibly from water. And on the bottom left, there were tiles that were missing up on the top right. And so we did, Brianna found some files back in 1999 when there was quotes for doing restoration. So 25 years ago, there was discussions about doing restoration of that and it hadn't happened. And then 2009, it was brought up again and hadn't happened. So that item has been discussed over the years about what to do with rehabilitation or restoration of it. So we walked through California State Parks because they do have some historic tile back behind Pacific House and other areas. We asked if they had any recommendations for tile. We walked through with them. We went to planning department to talk about historic preservation. Like, is this a historic wall? Is this a historic property? How do we treat this? So with that, we also reached out to some local historians on what to do with the item. But since it is a potentially historic wall, we believe that we should go through the Secretary of Interior standards for treatment of historic properties. This is the national guidelines, which are preservation, rehabilitation, restoration, or reconstruction. And at the time I wrote this report, I believe that we should be doing it as what would be a reconstruction because of the deterioration of the tile, in that what a reconstruction would be is a historically accurate installation there. So it'd be a ceramic tile inset in the same place that it was, but somebody would recreate it, repaint it, and then at the bottom, we would have to put, replica as of 2024 by that artist. Because when I looked at that, and you'll see the pictures attached on the document, that there was a lot of chipping on the current tiles that were not missing. So those tiles were starting to chip off, and everything would have to be removed. So that's where the rehabilitation is not, I did not find it would be, or the preservation to protect and stabilize. I think it was past that, because 25 years after, rehabilitation should have been done, it's gotten to the point where it just starting to fall apart. If you haven't seen the agenda report, it was in the Monterey Peninsula Herald. There is an article in the agenda report from February 22nd, 1935. I'll just read it quickly. A striking feature of the sunken garden at the Few Memorial will be a unique map of California executed in color tile, the gift of Edgar Walter, prominent San Francisco artist. The map is about 2.5 by 4 feet in size and will be embedded in the rock wall of the garden. It portrays the shape and extent of California as it was pictured in minds of Spanish cartographers by descriptions of pioneer explorers, with the Bay of San Francisco and Bay of Monterey in approximately their correct positions, but with other details widely at variance with modern ideas. Labeled Plano Mapo del Viaje, hecho desde Monterey el Gran Puerto de San Francisco, the map shows the Pacific as Mar del Sur, or Southern Ocean. It indicates its location as P. Pueblo Monterey, while Carmel is shown as M. Mission Carmelo. The interior valley is shown simply as vast, expansive tulares. The map is the work of P.F. Petrus, fountain maker of Tubutama, and bears the date of 1777. I don't know the actual age of it. So, but 2 p.m. today, I got a call that they heard a loud crash outside the city manager's office, and the tile wall completely fell off. So with that, there are some attachments in here with this, but if Brianna, welcome, she's our new artifact specialist. If you want to just step up and just show the piece, for example, of what we have left over.
Hello. So this is one of the tile pieces that fell off of the wall today. Most of it fell off in big chunks because there is wire along the back that was kind of helping hold it together.
Yeah, and so what that, I'll say thank you, Brianna. And the pieces, essentially small flakes of the lacquer on the front, or the glaze on the front, was chipping off as it came off. So pieces are chipping off of there. And that's why I believe it's far past restoration of anything, and that we should be working on. So what I was, and my intention for this agenda item was to get the commission's feedback on what to do with this, and whether that would be to get your feedback on whether you thought rehabilitation or restoration or what we should do with it. But when I was looking at it the other day, and I felt like, okay, this is something that we should identify and try to figure out before it falls down. And of course, that was 3 days ago when we did this. So
Good thing you said that, and now you have your answer.
right.
So the wall didn't fall down, just the map fell out of the wall.
Yeah.
And the wall is structurally okay, so we could put something back in there?
Yeah. So what it looks like to me is that you'll see, if you walk over in there now, you'll see these circles where basically it looks like they use like a cement to basically inlay there. There was like a wood frame at some point in there. There was cement pieces in there. The wood is all rotted out all along the side. So that's why I think it was probably a water damage that was in there. And I would recommend we get some ceramic artist that was in there that would possibly do something, maybe a stainless steel or something on the back that could be mounted in there that might be weather resistant, and then install that inset in there in that wall. It is a historic wall, but these walls, this local Monterey stone does chip and fall pretty often from a lot of these walls that you'll see all around town too. But the wall itself is part of the historic garden from here in the area. And I believe it's sound enough that we would just have to have those additional things cleaned up. Like there has to be some work done, cleaned up to take out that piece, to have a clean adhesion so that we can install something else in there.
So for the reconstruction, you're talking about some kind of ceramic structure and then a glaze on it that's going to look like the original? Are you going to simulate the original tiles? Or are you going to have one big tile that looks like several tiles?
So I think when this issue first came up, Brianna and I talked, and I said, can you reach out to MPC's ceramic department and ask if they know any ceramic artists? Can you reach out to the different schools? Can we reach out to different art galleries in these areas that might work with ceramic artists? Because I think the thing about, with the Secretary of Interior guidelines, what you want to do is you want to do those, I think they're probably roughly about 4x4, I think 4 inches by 4 inches tiles, doing something as similar to that as possible, as similar as you can as possible. Now, it might be a nicer, like a thicker glaze that they use. It might be more robust and last longer if possible. I don't know if we have to do the exact same materials, like, the same exact materials on there. But I do think it looks as similar. So you want it done in ceramic rather than being done in metal, or rather than it being done in plastic or something like that, or even a different image. I think it should be as similar to that Alta California map as possible and look like it would have looked in 1935. Because the other option is possibly, if some people would potentially reconstruct it with the wear included, but I think, having it look like a ceramic that was brand new so that it wears over time would be ideal.
Yes.
Seems to me before we get into the detail of exactly how this is going to be redone, we ought to raise the question of A, is it of any real value historically? I have trouble seeing. B,
Your microphone.
Your mic, Mike.
that whole garden is a terrible insurance risk. I mean, some kid is gonna bump their head on the sharp stones that are sort of set in. I mean, that whole thing needs to be rehabilitated or paved over, in my opinion. And I really don't see putting a lot of money into something that is, as far as I can see, irrelevant to us. Monterey.
Adding on to what Mike was saying, I think one of the key things is who's the artist? Somebody important? I have the name. I can find it.
Montalvan Triana. Montalvan Triana. And I think we could do more research on that, on the artist. I think the thought is that this is one of the few historic sites. This is part of the Few Memorial and Colton Hall kind of complex area. And that this area, it is accessioned in our catalog as part of our art collection. This right here was on there. So it was something that we have in our art, and we have the ability to de-accession items in our art collection as well. I don't know, Dennis, if you have any additional thoughts or anything.
I think the piece I was.
Sure, Michael.
I was informally asked at one point to review the condition of that, and similar to what we're talking about today and what Brian brought up about bringing in, tile experts about restoration. It's actually a good example of what would have been used in the 20s, 30s in a Spanish colonial revival type of mural in a garden, which were very popular at the time, especially around some of the historic adobes here. And I think that was the idea, to recreate, that would be part of our history, showing Monterey as which became the capital of Spanish California. And so that's represented on that map. So it has significance in that way. The garden itself is historic. It's changed over time. The stone, I think most of the low wall was put up by the public, through funds of the Public Works Administration. In other words, the WPA, Work Progress
So
Administration.
that's my question before. That mural was put in as part of the WPA project?
I suspect that because 1935 and
Because-
36.
Because if that's
36
the case, in my view, that makes it historic in itself.
Yeah.
It was
yeah.
part of WPA and it should be saved as much as we can.
Who owns the wall?
That's the city. That's city
City owns
property.
Both the wall and,
Yeah.
The property.
in addition to what you said about the WPA, it's also over 50 years old.
Yeah.
So you run into another category that argues for saving it. And from my experience, just with old maps here, trying to, they're historic. The first guy who came into Monterey did not give us a good description, so they didn't find Monterey for another couple of centuries. Okay, that's interesting when you see the map that the fellow drew. So I think there's value in this as part of our history.
Yeah, and I will say on my side, the reason I wanted to bring this to attention on there, because there are, as we know, a number of priorities for here for museums and activities on here. But finding some direction would help us find what essentially would that cost. And I think just getting the initial kind of an estimate and cost can help us find out where does this fit in our priorities for, for the city and for this museum commission and our collection. It's like, if it far exceeds, then we have something at least on file that we say, okay, we know we have this project, and where do we file it? Because as we see needs in Pacific Biological Laboratories, Colton Hall, our worker houses, all of these different items need work on them. It's kind of figure out if it's a smaller project with a smaller cost, is there somebody that's easier to fund this ourselves, or do we have to go out for grant funding? But that's where I just wanted to get like an awareness, because I do think that this is an immediate, like, there are a lot of people that go into this garden as well. I see people just going in there, having their lunch, people go in there for photographs. This is it's a pretty actively used place here in the city right there, and having something that's a map of Alta California, really representing that era is important to me, and to have on this property here.
You want a motion?
I guess I just wanted to, I don't think I need a motion at this point, but I just wanted to kind of get the sense of the commissioners, if there was anything, if we were on the right track of looking at doing a replica and getting even as I mentioned, when I did this agenda item, I wanted to see, like, am I on the right track of doing a replica of it,
So
rather than trying to go forward with rehabilitation of that older.
I mean, the original can't be saved at all.
I don't think we can bring it in. It just fell. It literally like fell, and there's a number of pieces off there.
Yeah.
And the pieces that fell because the glaze is flaking off. That I don't know, like if we were to reset it in there, like it would take a ton of work to actually take off all the backing that's on there, the cement backing that's still on there. And then the pieces that fell will have to be chipped, re-glued, repainted.
Yeah.
And that, to me, is just like that extent of the work, rather than having somebody saying, okay, can you repaint this map on these tiles and then redo the artwork? And this kind of like in this exact side, and having that done, I think would be a lot, would last way much longer, would be something that we could have for a few decades.
And the image of the map, I think, is the important part of this, not necessarily the way it was constructed. And therefore, I think a reconstruction that brings all of the map back
Mhm.
is really to be preferred from my point of view.
From my point of view, the way to do that would be to scan all the individual pieces and then put them all back together, Photoshop.
A big puzzle.
A puzzle, as long as I don't know what happened to the pieces that fell 15 years ago. There
Well,
are some that are missing.
You've already got photographs of it in the wall.
And then we can sell puzzles and make money.
Well, we could do that with a new one
It was
too.
up there for almost 9
Either one,
years.
yeah, yeah.
That's a good idea.
My perspective is none of us are qualified to do this job. So if there is anybody who is qualified to do the job, they might be able to give us the pros and cons
Mhm.
and the cost, as you indicated, and then that makes the decision a lot easier.
Yeah, and I will say that's why we checked in with our local historians on this as well, some contacts that planning works with about the process and what to do. And it was to, if we do take things down, photograph them, making sure you have high quality photographs for future or repairing on certain areas. So that was kind of the set. And if not, we just do the historically accurate map. And so I think at this point, that's where I think, because it has fallen down, I think it's gotten to that stage that we're really should at least, Brianna and I should be working on the next steps is just calling a couple ceramic artists and saying like, what cost do we have on here?
Yeah.
Can we accommodate this? And if not, we come back to the commission, give you guys an update at another time. But at least at this point, just so the commission knows that that piece of art has fallen down. We've taken all the pieces. We're going to place them in storage. So yes, we do have the pieces. And no, we have not thrown them out. They're still accessioned in our database. So they're still part of the museum's collection. And if they were not part of the collection, then we'll deaccession them in that process. But until that time, we're going to keep these items in storage. So we'll give you that update.
Do we have good photographs?
Not ones when it was fully complete, as far as I know. And I think that Brianna and I will probably have to go back, or I'll ask her to kind of look more on some of the older ones, or if we might have the photo that we have from 2006, which is the oldest photo that I found in Past Perfect, is blurry. That's one of the ones that I attached on here. That's one of the problems. The ones that I took recently are much clearer, and that's ones I took like some about a year ago, and I took some a couple weeks back. But I don't know if we have some somewhere in some of our museum files that because we have a number of artwork databases and different things where we've had over time. So it's about finding that item. And if we have it, especially if we have the film, like if we have the negative or if we have the slide, then yes, we'll have a much better slide and negative. And then that changes, as you're saying, Commissioner Evans or Commissioner Castagna, like, what do you do with that image, right? Because if you have a very high scan, like, if you have a negative, you can scan that in at a very high quality and work with a ceramicist and say, can this then be screened on there?
You'll get a much orders of magnitude more higher resolution image from scanning than you will take the photograph.
Absolutely. And that's where I was thinking, like, especially if we have the negative. So somewhere, a lot of these things where we have, if we have the
The negatives are not that good.
well, with photos, but I would say the pieces though, because the pieces have how the pieces have fallen off, and it's already missing a number of pieces. I want to have like a complete,
Oh, right. But
Right.
but in terms of getting an original, an image of the completed.
Is
map.
the microphone?
John, your mic.
that's, yeah, I understand. Yeah, I understand. what you-
Anyway.
Yeah. So I think we can look at some of those pieces as we can, but so much of it has deteriorated past that I think if we did scan it in like that, there'd have to be a number of digital manipulation where people like fill in color enhancement,
Well, yeah,
add in,
after you get everything.
after we
scanned,
scan it.
but I think you should start out just documenting everything,
Yeah.
scanning it all.
The reason I asked the question is there is a product sold. It looks like glass or plexiglass that you can put the image on.
Mhm.
For example, if you're restoring a house and you want to show the inside, even if there's nothing inside, if you had a picture of another identical one, you could put it on this glass, put it in place of the picture window, and the public would not know that they're looking at the window and not looking inside. It may be an alternative if
Mhm.
we need it. I prefer redoing the thing, but if we can't, might be another solution.
Yeah, well, we'll be doing some investigation.
I'll try again. If my grandson was standing out there with me and we had this back, I don't know what I'd say. Would be worthwhile about it. It's totally inaccurate. It's of doubtful provenance, in my opinion. It's complicated. It doesn't feature Monterey in any way that I can tell. It's irrelevant.
So between now and the next meeting, you'll research this and come back with us and
Yeah,
what you find?
I can come back and we'll do some research in terms of like what any options are, or if we get any feedback from anybody.
All right, very good. Anyone else have any questions? Any public comments out there? Okay. So we'll go on to informational reports and staff comments.
Awesome. That's me again. All right, thank you, Chair Thomas. First off, I want to welcome our new artifact specialist, Brianna Schwerling. If you want to come up and just say hi.
Hello, everyone. I've been in my position now for a month and a half, and I've really enjoyed it. I've learned a lot, and just really excited about all the projects that I'll get to help the City of Monterey Museums with.
Yeah.
Welcome.
And we're very excited to have Brianna on the team. Thank you, Brianna. So she'll, you'll get to know her more as we work on projects together, and should be a strong part of our team.
And I got to give her a tour of the little JCL museum, so I was happy about that.
Perfect. Yeah, we've been trying to get her, myself, Francesca, Brianna have been kind of trying to meet with different folks, California State Parks, just different things out there to just try to build this network, because it's important for us to have the network and the relationships with different agencies all throughout here in Monterey. To continue to build off of that. The next item, fiscal year 25 budget was presented at a special council session April 24th. There will be another budget meeting in June. I don't have the date right now. I do know it'll be in there in June. The only real increase at this time is for museums is $15,000 towards part-time seasonal or on-call staff budget. And what I had asked for was an increase of staffing, so that a number of different staffing things, but one of the ones that I asked for was for cultural arts assistant again, so we can do more programs at Colton Hall. So that's, we had only $15,000 increase, so it's a small increase from last year. Any other budgets that are going to be asks that are going to come up on there, I would say the public comment is going to be during the budget session. So if you have budget sessions and you have comments for council or recommendations from this commission, I would say make them to your council about what we would want on there. The Cannery Row Days started off, and I think we had a number of programs with Chair Thomas. We had Dennis Copeland, Joe Livernoy yesterday, Susan Schillinglaw. We've had a number of different programs out there. Linda Yamane came and did a basket weaving demonstration over at Colton Hall over the past weekend. So we've just had a number of different programs which have been well attended, and excited to work with a number of partners on that. And recently met with the children of artist Erica Barton, for folks know from Monterey Angels. They came out. I gave them a tour of the different angels, the condition. They remembered working on some of the pieces of metal that put on there. So that was really nice. And I also talked with them and the Monterey History and Art Association about possibly doing an exhibit of the Monterey Angels at the Stanton Center this fall, like this kind of winter time. So to highlight putting up more of them out there so people could also see the different eras, the 1956, the 1973, 1999, see them side by side and putting more out there.
You're talking about inside or outside?
Possibly inside, but then maybe escalate hanging a couple more on their banisters on the outside as well. So with that, I'm also, I put on there, I've also have a couple of quotes out right now from some different vendors where I'm working on making the replicas of those angels, because the angels right now, if folks want to see them, let me know, give you a little tour. The paint is peeling off of every single one of those. The lacquer has been peeled off of just about all of them. And because they're repeated use outdoors, we've been having wetter and wetter winters. I've mentioned this before to commissioners in the past that those things are not going to last. Those are just there's art and then there's holiday decorations. And so I consider them art. And I think that each one is unique and that we should keep every one of those. So I worked on getting quotes from multiple vendors. I'm waiting for the final quote so that we can make replicas to put out during the holidays, and we can put the originals out on our buildings or places where they're more secure. But when we put them out on places like Del Monte and Lighthouse, and they're exposed to heavy elements and they're wood panels, the wind is just tearing them off, and they're getting thrown in the back of a truck, stacked up in the back of a truck, hung up there, and they've got gouges throughout them. And I'm really concerned about the longevity of those. So I'm working on getting them installed on what's called an ACP panel. It'll be take a photograph, they'll do a vinyl print, and then if we get a damage to one, we'll just get a new one printed and we'll hang those up for this year and see how those go. We're planning on working with the Steinbeck Center to film a VR tour of the Pacific Biological Laboratories, and going to figure out exactly what that will be, whether that will be led by a docent or myself, but just kind of expanding access to that facility as well. And I know at the last meeting I mentioned the grants that were put forward, but the grant request for Colton Hall from the National Park Service and Community Foundation for Monterey County are still in the review stage. So I've not gotten any questions back. I've not gotten back any feedback. So that would be one from the NPS grant is regarding the historic structures grant. That's the one to work on weather resilience and repointing on that building where there's issues with drainage around it. There's issues with the stone and the mortar. And then the CFMC grant is regarding interpretive spaces inside Colton Hall. So that would be basically new displays for the old jail and Colton Hall. So doing some new exhibits inside of the space there. So I'm hoping both of those go through, or at least one of them. And the DLI Language Day is being held Friday, May 17th. We will have the Presidio of Monterey Museum open for visitors, and the parking will be available there outside the Presidio Monterey Museum. Make sure to bring your ID. They'll have a shuttle. You have to check in, show your ID, and then they will take they'll have the bus that takes you up to the upper Presidio out there. And with that, we just have our statistics for kind of the first 3 months and of the year, and happy to answer any questions regarding it.
Could you tell us what the virtual reality is going to be used for? Is that going to be loaned out, or how are we going to use that?
I think they're most likely going to be housing it on their website. So it'd be something that you could log in and actually put on our website too. So people that have either a device, or some people use it like that's what we're going to figure that out more when we talk with the filming team about what their plans are with that. But most likely what it would be is be on our website, like a VR tour that you go on there, because there's different museums that have VR tours that are available. You go on there, and if you have the
QR code.
well, you have the QR code, but also if you have the type of equipment, for example, there's I'm trying to think of the name of the main vendor, like the Quest or one of these other devices that are on there that you can put on and wear a headset, and some people can do it from home, or the other VRs are basically in there and they scan it with a VR camera, and then you could look up, look down, highlight a different point. So I think with that, I just did a walkthrough with a collections person from the Steinbeck Center last week, just to kind of show her what was original from the lab, what has been redone on there, showed her some maps, the original from Ed Ricketts Jr., just to get, so they can see like what story and where they would go on there. So I don't know exactly where they would put it, but I did ask if they did film something that we would want access on our website so that people could look at it as well and be able to view.
So it's available to, would be available to the public.
Yes.
Any else questions? Any public questions? No. So are we see the library museum director's activity or did we just do that?
Well, I think, yeah, just if there's any other questions or nothing that needs to be approved off of it. But-
Sorry?
Oh, you're asking, was there anything need to be approved on?
No, I asked, are we going to receive the library museum director's report? Or is that what we just did?
That's what we just did.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Oh, we're good. Yeah.
All right, so now we have commissioner comments. Any comment?
Well, I was fortunate enough to attend the event, thanking the volunteers for their work, and it was very well done. And kudos to the staff for putting it together. Thank you.
I'll second that motion. And I am delighted to see Brianna is on staff and looking forward to all kinds of good things that will happen.
My only comment would be, again, angels are higher priority than that. Collection.
Nothing, no comment.
Well, I'm very excited about this virtual reality tape. As you know, I have a lot of tour people coming here and they always want to go in the lab and they can't do that. And I think that would be a wonderful addition. So I hope we can bring that to reality.
So I'm also pleased to see that Brianna is on your staff now. I think it should be a really good addition to the city museum. Also, I just want to mention a little promo to the JCL Museum. On the May 25th, we're opening a new exhibit, a little exhibit about Roy Hattori, the abalone diver. And it actually focuses on two parts of his life, one on his discovery of the white abalone in 1939, and then his post-abalone diving days. And one of those was that early 1950s, he was one of the very first skin diving clubs in all of California, called the Monterey Peninsula Sea Otters. It's a sea otter in a wetsuit, holding a big yellow fish. And this is a big patch they wore on their jackets. And so I had a bunch of these made up. So if you come to our event on the 25th, you could have one of these buttons to take home. So it'll be at 1 o'clock starting on May 25th. And we'll have family from the Hattori family, Roy's grandson, Tommy Hattori, who is a scientist on his own right now. We'll talk about his grandfather and there'll be a book signing there and all kinds of cool stuff. So I hope you can come.
What time again?
It's at 1 p.m. I'm sorry?
At the JAC.
At the JCL, right. And will be refreshments to be had. So anything else out there? Any public comments? Anybody else have any more comments? No, then our next meeting is scheduled for June 6th. And June 6th, and then I will call this meeting adjourned.